Hi there everyone, this is Judge Lackman. For this video I'll be speaking about the subject of facts. There's a phrase that people have thrown out pretty often where they say facts matter. And of course, when we look at any topic that we want to understand or gain clarity about, we want to ascertain what are the verifiable facts in that matter and put those facts together to form a valid conclusion. However, this is really something much more challenging than we might imagine to eventually arrive at an accurate or valid conclusion. For one thing, when we say something is a fact, we're referring to some piece of data or information, and we might not be able to personally verify that it's actually something accurate or true. So we're often receiving facts and assuming that those facts are true facts rather than somehow inaccurate or distorted facts. So the very factuality or truthfulness of the facts in the first place may be difficult to ascertain. Then, even if we do determine that these facts are completely true and valid facts, the conclusions that they may lead to will vary depending on other pieces of data or information, depending on the context and so on. So in order to really understand something, we often need to see the whole picture, not just fragments of information or scattered facts. To really understand a forest, you can't just look at one tree. You would have to look at all the trees in that forest, view them all together collectively, to really form your perception of that forest. You could look at a particular tree and see the details of that tree, and those would be facts that you have relevant to that tree and that forest, but they don't give a full picture or understanding of that forest. And pretty much every phenomenon in our reality or in our life is like that to some extent. We could look at a particular action or something a particular person says and form conclusions based on that very narrow, specific piece of information. Even though it's factual, we might not see a greater context, and therefore our conclusion might not be that realistic or reliable in that scenario. We can look at a few simple examples of how facts can be misunderstood or taken out of context and used to form false conclusions. I'll use an example first from the area of research in health. In the medical field, many studies are done looking at the effects of drugs. So someone could do a study and they could collect data. Let's say they're studying a new medication that's designed to treat anxiety. So they'll give that particular medication to a certain number of people, and then they'll see first, after a certain amount of time of consuming that medication, what do people report their levels of anxiety are. So let's suppose you gave that medication to 50 people, and then a month after they've started taking that medicine, you survey them and see what their level of symptoms is. So let's suppose that after a month, out of those 50 people, 25 of them report that their level of anxiety has significantly decreased. That sounds pretty good. 50% of your sample have reported a positive response to that medication. So someone could take that piece of data, that information, which in a sense is a fact, that's what you observed, that's what those people reported, and what you recorded in the study so far. And a claim could be made that this medicine is highly effective for treating anxiety. However, there could be additional information that's relevant to this situation that needs to be also observed, recorded, and pieced together with the other information to come to a valid conclusion. So perhaps in this study there was also a control group, meaning a group that you were also observing who didn't receive the medication, and this is a placebo control group where that group were given something else so that they thought they were getting a treatment or medication even though it was an inert compound, something that wasn't actually the drug, that wasn't a chemical that would have an effect for them. So then you look at this other group, the control group, you look at the data for them. Let's suppose they are the same sample size of 50, and out of that group you get a report that 30 of them say that their symptoms of anxiety have significantly decreased after a month. So you have this placebo control group where actually they report slightly better results than the people who received the medication. So it seems that for them, just receiving something that they think was a medication that would help treat their anxiety led to them having an experience of their anxiety significantly going away. So if you put that piece of information together with the previous piece of information, you probably wouldn't conclude that the medication was an effective treatment for anxiety, because it didn't help people any more than a placebo. Let's suppose, using the same example, that you went ahead and continued to follow and monitor these samples of people in the study, and perhaps a year later or 2 years later, you also examined how they were doing, how were their symptoms of anxiety at that point. And let's suppose, looking at that data, that a couple years later, among the sample of people who received the medication, that their levels of anxiety actually returned to the same level that they were experiencing before they started taking any medication. So at this longitudinal follow-up point, it seems that their anxiety is just as bad as it was when they started in this study. So if you look at the data in that context, you might also conclude that this particular medication isn't really effectively treating the anxiety of the people that were receiving it, at least not in a long-term sense. You could say that temporarily it appeared to reduce their symptoms, but it perhaps did nothing to actually address whatever was triggering or creating their anxiety, and it may have actually inhibited people from having the chance to develop skills to truly cope with or resolve their anxieties. So in that case, or in that way of hypothesizing about it, the medication may have actually interfered with people recovering or healing from their anxiety. So this shows how we could take any particular fact, and depending on what other facts are available and what context we're looking at it in, we can come to completely different conclusions about things. You can look at just about any situation or circumstance in your own life with this understanding now, where you could take a fact about something that happened, how your parents treated you, something that happened at your job, the way your employer or your coworkers interacted with you, and you could perceive a particular fact and jump to some conclusion about it without seeing a bigger picture or a greater context. Looking at our own life from a psychological and spiritual perspective, we often see things from a very limited ego viewpoint, from the way our personality self perceives and understands things, the way it interprets particular facts or phenomena, without seeing a greater spiritual perspective, without seeing how our soul might look at the path that our life has taken, the meaning and significance of various events and occurrences in our life journey. So we may have certain facts that we're perceiving, and we're giving a particular meaning or significance to them, when our soul would be looking at those same facts and giving a much different meaning or significance to them. We may see certain things in our life as very unpleasant or tragic, and we may look at ourselves as a victim of particular circumstances, whereas our soul may look at that same scenario, and from its perspective it has chosen to have this aspect of itself, having the human experience, encounter various challenges in order to propel or foster personal growth, to foster spiritual development. So from that perspective, something that the ego aspect of the self may have looked at in a very negative way is something very undesirable to experience. The soul sees it as a great opportunity for growth, for expanding the individual's perspective on life, perhaps something that helps that individual develop greater compassion for others, greater strength or perseverance, whatever particular quality the soul may have desired to develop in that lifetime. So if we only have the very basic material facts, the superficial facts of what we see occurring, we're often not seeing a greater spiritual context of what lies beneath or beyond that, of what greater picture those facts fit into. So let's be open to exploring pretty much anything in our life or in the world around us with the understanding that facts matter, but the totality of facts matter more than isolated facts. The whole context is quite significant, and to really get toward the truth of things, toward deeper truths especially, we need to expand the scope of our perspective. We need to have a much greater range of facts to assemble and put together to really see things more clearly. And this goes not just for things that we're perceiving at a physical five-sense level, but also how those phenomena fit into the bigger spiritual picture of our soul's journey of the purpose of our life and the experiences that we encounter. So I hope that looking at things in this way helps us refine our awareness, helps us see things from a more holistic and a more truthful perspective, rather than jumping to quick judgments based on isolated facts which in many cases we may not even be able to personally verify are accurate facts. So the next time you see someone stating or posting something that facts matter, consider that when they say that, they may not be considering this greater picture or larger context, and whatever facts are being presented in and of themselves may not lead toward an accurate conclusion or a clear picture of whatever phenomenon are being described or discussed. I appreciate each of you for taking your time to view this video, for pursuing personal growth, spiritual development, for looking to expand your perspective. For those that are interested in these types of subjects, for those that are seeking support for holistic health and healing, I invite you to view my website, phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. You can also view some more of my videos on YouTube, and I'll also be placing many of these videos on other mirror type video sites. One you can find them on for now is BitChute, bitchute.com. For now, I would like to wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.